Hello, and welcome to our webinar on our new phone bar. The phone bar allows access to all telephony functions to be controlled from the PC screen. The phone bar integrates directly with EMIS so that you can make and receive internal and external calls and video calls, send ad hoc and template SMS, and securely exchange photos. Clinicians can also access their appointment list within the phone bar to seamlessly switch between patient records and call, video call, or message patients. The phone bar is pinned to the bottom of the main PC display screen and laid out so that general telephony is located on the left-hand side of the phone bar and patient communication is located on the right. So, even when minimized, surgeries have access to their patients' contact details. So during the session today, we're going to be looking at how to access the phone bar. We'll be looking at the phone bar icons, the phone controls, and the settings where you can control how Phonebar works with your clinical database. We'll also look at the active patient options, as well as our new appointment list feature. So to first access the Phonebar, once downloaded, you'll see an icon on your PC desktop. And the first time you access Phonebar, you'll need to double click on that icon. That will then start up Phonebar in its minimized format. And then when you log into the clinical database, it will automatically connect to Phonebar and complete the login so that you can then access the active patient and the appointment list details. We'll be using EMIS as our demonstration here, and all of our patient data is dummy data, so there's no records there for real patients. I'm just going to go to my desktop now, where you can see that I've got our Surgery Connect logo here. I've already started up the phone bar, and it's in its minimized format now down on my taskbar at the bottom. I can access the help pages by using the little question mark in the Surgery Connect logo, and that will take you straight to our online help features for phone bar. I can also move the phone bar from left and right across the screen, depending on where I want it sat. Once I've completed my login to EMIS, these two icons for the active patient and appointment list will then become white, and I can start to access those even in its minimized format. So I'm just going to finish off my EMIS login now by popping in my password. So this is our training EMIS database, and that's now connected to the phone bar down at the bottom of my screen, and you can see that all the icons now have gone white. If I click on the dialer icon, that will expand the phone bar so that I then have access to call controls. Within the icons here, my first icon is to set my device. So phone bar can send your calls to different devices depending on how you're working. And if you click on the device icon, it will open up the list that you have on your user profile. So here I can either have the calls coming directly through phone bar using the on-screen phone. I can forward my calls to my mobile, and I can edit that number that I'm forwarding calls onto a personal number by using the blue pen here next to the number. Or I can have my calls going through a desk phone if I'm in the practice and want all my calls to go through the phone that's installed next to the PC on that particular desk. I can enter a phone number that I want to dial directly into Phonebar. So there's no on-screen keypad for you to press numbers on. You just need to type in the number, and you can either use the number keypad or the numbers across your normal keyboard on any keyboard to enter that number. I can also set my availability over here on the right-hand side for calls. At the moment, it's showing that I'm available. And if I click on the little bar here, it will then bring up my user status where I can choose from the statuses available on Surgery Connect. So I have an available status where I can make and receive calls. That will be all calls. So if I'm part of a group, I'll also receive calls through that queue. I can do direct calls only, which would mean that only calls coming into my short dial or into a direct dial number I have will actually ring on my screen, and I can be available within the practice, but not taking calls through any queues that I'm a member of. I can go into Do Not Disturb, which would stop all calls coming in or going out of Phonebar. And at the end of the day, if I mark myself as away, that will be how I will log out of Phonebar to show that I'm no longer taking calls because it's the end of my working day. That status is also reflected in the little icon that you will see for Phonebar within your taskbar. So you will see a little orange circle, and if Phonebar ever disappears, if you just click onto the orange circle, it will then bring it up to the top again on your screen. There's also the settings icon here, and with that I can change how Phonebar works with my clinical database. Click on the settings icon, it will open up the settings window, and on the preferences I can turn on or off Quick File on Surgery Connect, which gives you the option to file correspondence directly to the patient's record as soon as a call is over or a text has been sent. That would then mean that you don't need to go separately to that patient's contact history to file any correspondence, although you can leave it and file it all in one go into one consultation note. You can also set whether Surgery Connect automatically searches your clinical database with an inbound call. So I have it here so that it's going to automatically find any patient records for me when the call comes in. I can also set what happens with my desk phone if I'm working in the practice, and I can have this set to automatically log me in which case each time I log into the clinical database, it will log me into the desk phone next to that particular PC, or I can have it confirm and ask me what I want to do each time I open up the clinical database from its locked state there. If you're not using desk phones, you can leave that turned off, and obviously it's going to use the phone through the phone bar and use the calls directly on the screen. Also in the settings here, you can change the audio and video preferences, so you can make sure that it's the headset and the camera that your PC or laptop is using there, so that all the call audio goes through this correct output. In the About section, that will tell you the version number that you're currently using of the phone bar there. Over on the left-hand side, we've then got our call controls. So we've got our box here where we can enter a telephone number. There's also a phone book icon here, and if I click on that, that will open up both the internal and the central directory as part of Surgery Connect. So it will open up to your colleagues first of all, so your internal directory. That will give you a list of any groups and users that you have within the practice setup, and you can search through that group just by typing the name of the user into the search box at the top. That will then bring up any users and groups that match that search criteria. So here we've got Dr. Lorna, who's part of our appointments group. If I wanted to speak to Dr. Lorna herself, I'd use the blue phone next to her name. If I didn't mind who I spoke to in the appointments team, or Dr. Lorna wasn't available for calls, so I needed to speak to somebody else, I could then use the appointments phone here, and that would dial through to whoever's next available within that team to take my call. There's also down at the bottom a little phone book icon here, and that will then access the central directory for the practice, where you can upload any external numbers that are useful as well. So things like wards, nursing homes, hospitals and pharmacies, any number that you dial regularly can be added into that directory so that all users can use the directory through the phone bar there. Now that I've found Dr. Lorna's contact details, I can just click on the blue phone. I don't even need to know which number Dr. Lorna is on because I'm looking for a particular user rather than a desk phone. And when I click on the call button, it will begin that call automatically to that user straight through the phone bar here. You can see the call's now started and it shows that it's calling out. You'll hear a ringing tone in your headset if you're using a headset. And then when that person answers, the phone bar will convert to a fully functioning phone directly on your screen here. There's also a call history button. So if I click on the icon here, which is the backwards timer, that will give you your call history on the phone bar. So you can see then any calls that have been made or received into your number. And you can also call people directly from that call history as well. That will also show any external numbers that you've connected to, as well as the internal numbers. Over on the right hand side, we've got our active patient details here. So when a call comes in on the phone bar, it will show the number of the person that's calling you, and then Surgery Connect will contact the clinical database to see if you have any patients that match that contact number. You can then see that that patient's name is brought up because I've asked the system to search automatically for those details. If I then answer that call, I can confirm I am indeed speaking to the correct patient, and when I click on the patient's name, it will automatically open the record within EMIS. And we can see that Bridget now is my active patient within the clinical database. Once the call is connected, you then have the call options shown here at the bottom of the phone bar. So we have a call timer on the left-hand side, which will obviously keep track of how long you've been on that call. You've also got a little flashing record button here, which is actually the call recording for that call. So you can pause the call recording just by clicking on the record icon. You'll get a voice in your ear that tells you the recording has been paused. And if you click on the same icon again, it will then restart the call recording and the voice will tell you it's been resumed. If you don't restart the recording by the end of the call, your next call is recorded automatically. Within the call controls, now that the call's connected, I can transfer this call by using the arrow here. And when I click on transfer, it will give me access to, first of all, my internal colleagues and show their status here so I can see who's actually available for a call before I try their number. I could search through the central directory in exactly the same way, or use my call history then to transfer this call to somebody I've already spoken to. I can also click on the phone here to bring up a dialer so that I can enter in the number if there's another number that I need to transfer this call to. To get back to your normal screen, just click on the transfer icon again, and that will stop the transfer. I can also put the call on hold here, and if I place the call on hold, it will then play the caller music whilst they're waiting, so they know they've not been cut off. You'll see the hold icon will pulse on the screen, and you've also got a place marker so that you can now see that you have that call on hold. To return to the call, just click on the hold icon again, and that will then resume the call for you. I could also mute my microphone here, so if I needed to ask a quick question rather than putting the patient on hold, I can just mute the microphone to ask the question, and I can then still hear what the patient's saying to me. I've also got a dialer here, so if I need to dial another number or any access numbers once I've connected to a number, I can bring up the dialer on the screen to type those numbers in. I also have the video icon here, so now I've connected a call. Because it's a mobile phone I'm connected to, I can send out the request to begin this call as a video call with this patient. And when you click on the video, it will then ask you if you want to send out an automated text message that will include the link to that video call. When you click on send invite, it will send it to the mobile number that you're connected to, and it will also give you a journey of what's happening with that information. So it will show you when the text has been sent out, when the patient's received that and opened it, and even when they're joining that video call. That's when this audio call will drop, and then the video call will be ringing for you on the screen in the phone bar. When you open the video call, it will open up in a video call window, so you'll have a larger image on the screen so that you can actually see what that patient was explaining. To end the call, it's just the red phone on the end here, and that will end the call on Surgery Connect. And because I have Quick File on, it's now asking if I want to file that call recording directly to Bridget Jones's clinical record. Now I have other correspondence that I'm going to have with Bridget today. So if I go back into my active patient window here, it will then bring up the communication methods for that particular patient once I have a patient active. So again, these are all dummy details, but I've got my patient name here, as well as their date of birth and age. And then I've got icons here so that I can communicate with that patient in various different ways. So I can call, I can message, so send a text, I can send a photo request if I need to see a picture of a particular thing that the patient's talking about, or I can do the video call if I actually want to talk to them through that video option. Our last icon here is to then view the contact history for that patient, and then I can file correspondence directly through the contact history here. It will file it into one consultation note, even if you select multiple communication methods, and that will then be available within the clinical database for anybody that can access that record within the clinical database. So once it's been saved into the clinical record, anybody that can access that patient's details can then listen to the calls or view any photos that you've saved there as well. Within the photo request, you can actually send that to an email address. So if you hover over any of the icons, it will show you the number that it's going to use, or give you a box here to enter in an alternative. And when you send the photo request again, you'll have a little journey that will then show you what's going to happen through the various stages. So with the photo request, it's going to confirm the number that we're sending that request to. You can also select who is notified within the practice when that photo is returned by the patient. So I'm going to leave it selected as myself, and as a default, it will always select you first. You can, however, in the drop down then select any other user within the practice. You can also enter in extra information around the photo that you need them to take directly into the message body here, which will then be seen by the patient. They will also have some general advice about taking pictures of particular areas. Once you've entered your details, if you then send that request, the patient will receive a link via text message, much as they do with the video call. They're able to then either attach or take a photograph via that link using the camera on their smartphone. Now, if that photo is taken in the last week, it will notify you of the date that the photograph was taken. You'll also have a little warning triangle if that's over 24 hours old, so you'll know it's not a recent picture. However, if it was taken there and then, you'll have no warnings, and you'll be able to then attach that to the patient's clinical record as and when you need to. When the photo is returned, you'll see a pop-up come up on the screen that will then have the photo image, and you can access that through the contact history for the patient. So we can see now that that photo has actually been returned from Bridget Jones. If I click on the pop-up here, that's my notification, it will open up the contact history window, and I can then see that I've got the photo here available to view. Now I can click it directly here from the contact history and have a look at that photo. It will open on my screen so that I can then see the image. And then if I want to file that to the patient's clinical record, I can then select that as a piece of correspondence directly through the contact history here. I can also add in any of the calls that I've made to that patient today so that I can add those into the same consultation record. I can then file that to the patient record, or we can discard all of those details by clicking on the delete button with the entries highlighted there. Okay, that's filed those particular pieces of correspondence for communications. So I could now close down the contact history here, and you can also see that EMIS has shown that we've now updated that clinical record, and I can now update the link here so that I'm looking at the latest consultation notes, which will now include the photo and any call recordings from the calls that you've associated and attached to that patient's record. Next to our active patient icon, we have the appointments icon. I can click on that and it will open up an appointments list from the clinical database. Within the window, I can select the list that I need to look at for the practice, and it will then bring the patient's details up onto the screen for me, and I can now call the patients directly through this appointments list. I've got the same icons as my active patient here to either call, send a text, do a photo request or a video call, or to file things through the contact history for that particular patient. I can also send out a text to all of the patients in the list to warn them that their appointment is coming up today, and that I'll be ringing them later on in the day. As you go through the list, you can refresh it to the top, although it will auto refresh each time you open up the appointments list there. You can then call patients directly from that list just by using the icon, and that will then create the call for you through the phone bar if that's the way that you contact the patient. And when they answer, we can then mark that as completed within the appointments list. That will then cross out that particular patient so that we can see then that is completed. Of course, I could file the correspondence as well directly through the contact history then for the patient as well to make sure it's all saved into the consultation notes. Now, at the end of the day, you do need to make sure that you make yourself away on the phone bar. That will then display on everybody's contact history and through the address book that your status has changed and you're no longer available for calls there. And then when you log out of the PC, that will log you out of the phone bar so that no calls then can be presented through the phone bar for your particular use.